Hello, welcome to Benchmarking 201, Energy Star Portfolio Manager. My name is Isaac Smith. I am the Pittsburgh 2030 District Building Performance Analyst. Thanks for joining me today. Many of you might have listened to the 101 session of this recording and kind of an intro to Portfolio Manager. If you're not familiar with Portfolio Manager, I would suggest you go back and listen to that one. If you are, 201 might be the right one for you, so we'll move forward from here. Today in our 201 session, some of the learning objectives that we'll cover will be editing property data, correcting or updating property use details, how to use the data quality checker in addition to some other data quality options you can look into, and then understanding and creating custom reports. Again, just for a note, if you're new to Portfolio Manager, you can either check out the 101 recording that we put out a couple weeks ago, or you can check out the Portfolio Manager Quick Start Guide on the EPA Portfolio Manager homepage. All right, so let's jump right in, editing property data. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to kind of the Portfolio Manager website here. So many of you have already created an account, and you will see this as your main page when you log in. Here you can see some of the properties that we set up in the 101 session, this PM training building, in addition to any other buildings that you would have set up previously, will kind of fall right here under your properties. Again, if you're new and need to add a property, you can go ahead and add a property here. Or on this right-hand side under the Properties section. Again, so there's a couple ways to edit property data. Assuming that you have a building in there, we're going to use this PM Training Building 2. Now there's a couple ways of editing and viewing property data. From this homepage, you can actually download the entire profile, which is found here, and that'll download all of your properties that you have set up. So here I have 5 properties. It'll download all 5, and you will get all the information that you have inputted into each profile. That might be too much information. You might be looking for just one individual building, in which case you're going to go ahead and click on the individual building you're looking to edit or view additional property information. So once you click on the property that you're looking for, you'll get to this homepage, which is kind of the property level tabs. We went over those last time in the 101 session. Here at the top, you'll see the summary tab, the details tab, energy and water. That's where you'll find your meters. Portfolio Manager actually added an additional tab recently, the waste and materials tab. Goals, where you can kind of set and track goals moving forward or set baselines and so forth, and then design would be if you're looking to build or design a new constructed building. Okay, so again, looking at how to edit those property details, another option would be to download property to Excel. So rather than downloading all 5 properties or however many properties you have into one Excel spreadsheet, this option gives you the ability to download just one property into an Excel spreadsheet. This is helpful if you want to kind of get a 30,000-foot view of your property, and maybe you're really handy with Excel and you want to play around with some of the uses and also the data that's associated with each of those meters. That's a good option for you. Otherwise, there's a number of other ways to view data, which we'll get a little bit into in terms of creating custom reports later in this webinar. But for now, in terms of editing property data, we're going to go ahead into the Details tab. So once you click on the Details tab, again, you'll see the use types that you set up in your property previously, whether it was in the 101 webinar or if you had set up buildings prior to that. So for this example, continuing from the 101 session, we have an office building that's 200,000 square feet, 50,000 square foot parking garage. Now, if you recall from the 101 session, the parking garage is on the same meter as the rest of the building, the office space, so therefore we have to include the parking garage as part of the building. The caveat is we don't include that square footage in the self-reported property square footage here. As you can see, the 200,000 square feet of office reflects the 200,000 gross square feet that we self-reported. The parking space is as an add-on because of that metering situation. Now, if the parking garage was sub-metered, we wouldn't have to include any of the parking square footage in this profile because we wouldn't have that energy associated with that parking included either. Okay, so if you recall setting up the basic property information here, we're going to go ahead. You can go ahead and click Edit. This is where you'll see, the basic information, the name, the address, the postal code. If you recall, this is important for weather normalization. Additionally, here you can see what you designated your property's primary function. This probably won't change unless for some reason you designated your property incorrectly and you've come back to edit the function of your building. If you're not sure about the property uses, you can go ahead and click on this link here, this property uses, and it'll direct you to some information on what sort of function or building type is the right type for your building. But again, we're going to stick with office. But for now, all of this property information has remained the same. You might need to edit. The occupancy is one thing that comes to mind as something that fluctuates. Additionally, you can designate your building as a federal property down here, or this other option is your property data maintained by a service provider. If not, you can go ahead and update or cancel. They'll both take you back to the same home page. If you made an adjustment, obviously you want to update that property. If you didn't do anything, you can go ahead and hit cancel. And eventually this will take me back to the home page. So you're back to your property level home page. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the second objective of correcting and updating property data. It still falls kind of within the editing property data realm, but let's call this a subcategory. So here you find your property uses and use details. Again, if you click on this down arrow, you will see the use details that you entered previously: gross square area, weekly operating hours, number of computers, workers, so forth. You can see the current as of date, which is basically from when the building was built, and that's perfectly fine to remain as of that date. And let's say now that we want to add some additional details or change those details. So the first thing I want to talk about is adding a vacant space designation. This is something that we come across often as your building might fluctuate over time. The occupancy changes. There's often vacant floor area or vacant sections of your building, and we want to account for that in the total energy consumption as part of this property information section. So we're going to go ahead and add a use type. Often your vacant area is probably going to be the same as your primary function, in which case we're going to select office. So go ahead and add that property use type. Here we are going to change it to, let's say, vacant office use. And again, just as a note, you can see the 4 exemptions to the rule why you should create a separate property use. Either your property use can be certified Energy Star, it accounts for more than 25%. Let's say you had a warehouse attached to your facility that was over 25% of the gross square floor area. You want to include that, not only because 25%, but also it's Energy Star eligible. And then if you have vacant or unoccupied office space or any space, that's what we're kind of demonstrating here. And then the last one is if the hours of operations differ by more than 10 hours from the main property use. Okay, so again, this vacant office use, we're going to name it. And for the time being, we're just going to create the vacant space as if it's been an option since the building came in to development or creation or even benchmarking. So we're just going to say 0 for the time being. Weekly operating hours is going to be 0, 0 number of workers, computers, 50% or more is going to be the case for heating and cooled. So we're going to leave the current as of dates, and then I will go back in and we can adjust some of these numbers in a little bit. So go ahead and save that use. And what you'll see now is when you go into the Details tab, you have a vacant office space within your building. Even though it's at 0 right now, it's still important to kind of have that vacant office space use because it might change over time, as we kind of talked about earlier. And it's important to make sure that your gross floor area lines up with your self-reported. As you can see here, we have 200 gross square feet and 200 self-reported gross square feet. We're still good there. So let's say we now want to report some vacant space in our building. So you're going to go ahead and click on the drop-down area here in your in the vacant office area, and there's two options. Now you can either correct mistakes or you can update with new information. Correcting mistakes would be if you entered an invalid number and you're going back to adjust that number because it's completely wrong. Update with new information is a little bit different. Let's say you had a vacancy in your office space at 0, and now you have 10,000 square feet of vacant office space, in which case you would do the update with new information. So let's go ahead and update with new information. So our gross floor area is going to be 10,000, we'll say, for the time being. Our weekly operating hours are going to be 0, as we already put in, so therefore we don't have to change this. We don't have to update these values because they're already listed at 0. Number of workers on main shift is going to be 0. Number of computers, 0. Percent that can be heated and cooled will also remain the same. Now, the current as of date is important. So right now it's August 23rd. Let's say we're going back a little bit, and actually we're going to go back prior to August 23rd because the example for this facility ended data December 31st of 2015. So let's say historically we're going to go back and say that there was 10,000 square feet of vacant office space that started in July 1st of 2015. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and save and update our profile. So this will take us back to the Details tab, and what you'll notice right away is that there is an error message, or you'll see this red exclamation point signifying that something is wrong. The vacant office space accounts for 10,000 square feet plus the occupied office space. Now we're at 210,000 square feet. So it's important to reflect what you self-reported originally. So we're trying to get back to 200,000 square feet. Now what we need to change is the occupied office space. So we're going to go ahead and update with new information. And here we are going to say that it's actually 190,000 square feet to reflect the 200 gross square feet total. And we want that current as of date to be the same as when we changed the unoccupied or vacant area. So that'll be 7/1/2015. We'll go ahead and save those updates. So now you will see that red exclamation point goes away. There's not an error message anymore. Our office occupied space is 190,000 square feet. Our vacant office space is 10,000 square feet. Now if you enter in some vacant office space and you see these numbers a little bit different than what you entered, don't be scared. Portfolio Manager has this option, or I shouldn't say option, it has this time-weighted average that it varies based off of the 12 months that you've selected your period from. The reason it hasn't adjusted for that is because we've gone back more than 12 months from when I selected this. It's August of 2016. We're selecting this for July of 2015. If that doesn't make any sense, I would say go ahead and select or type in time-weighted average under the help section. You can find it here. or if you just go into the Energy Star main website and type in time weighted average, there'll be some more information on how they calculate that. Now the other option, rather than updating new information, would be correcting mistakes. So let's say that we remeasured the vacant space, and all of a sudden we realize it's not 10,000 square feet, it's actually 20,000 square feet. So we're going to go ahead and correct that mistake rather than updating with new information. So now we have 20,000 square feet is our corrected value. We don't have to change any of these current as of dates, and we're going to save the corrections. Okay, now you will notice again that there is an error and we need to adjust, just as we adjusted the vacant space, we need to adjust the occupied space. So again, we'll go ahead and correct mistakes, and we will change this from 190 to 180. And go ahead and save those corrections. Okay, so now we are accurate again with our property gross square floor area and our self-reported gross square floor area at 200. We have our vacant office space in there. We have our fully occupied office space. Again, you can see these values if you click that drop down. If any of these values have changed, for example, your number of workers on the main shift might have changed since you put in the vacant space. Let's say your workers went down from 460 to 420 with a decrease of 20,000 square feet of unoccupied space now. Again, you'll want to go ahead and update with new information, and I would guess that your number of computers also has changed. So let's say 420, and your number of computers is now 420, and this is current as of 7/1/2015 to reflect the other changes that we made at the same point in time. So go ahead and save that. At this point, we're pretty good. We've updated the vacant space that we've had in our office building. We've updated some of the use details associated with those spaces. We've kind of completed this aspect or this learning objective. The other thing you want to check out is our next learning objective, which is how to use the data quality checker and also how to understand some of these data quality issues. So as we saw in our use details section, we saw that explanation point. We have one up here in energy if you look at the property tabs here. So we're going to go ahead and click on that energy tab. And what you'll notice is specific to the electric meter, there is a error that we need to figure out what's wrong. If you're savvy enough, you might be able to pick this up in this graph that's here. You'll notice in the electricity that it drops down significantly, and that might be a problem that we need to remedy. So two ways of doing this. You can click on the electric meter or the meter that has the issue, and Portfolio Manager will generate an error message saying what is wrong. So for example, the electric meter has a gap of 28 days. Essentially, it's missing an entire month. So we need to figure out what that use is. Go back into your bill records, figure out what the consumption was and what the cost was and the meter reading dates. We can assume that the meter reading dates were probably from 3/5 to 4/3 in order to cover those 28 days that are missing. So the one way to correct this would be to go down and add another entry. And this entry will populate right here. Don't worry that it's at the bottom. As long as you put in the correct meter reading dates, it will move the entry around. So you're going to want to put in 3/5/2015 to 4/3/2015. I'm sorry. And the correct value for the time being, let's just say this was 200,000 kilowatt hours. And the cost was $4,000. And then you'll go in and save that bill. Then you'll see the error message go away and everything should check out. If for some reason you didn't do it correctly, the error message will still be there. For now, I'm going to cancel this just so I can show you another way as to check for this error. So it should take us back to the home page. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to do this data quality checker. So you'll go ahead and click on the Details tab. You'll click on the Summary tab, and you'll look for this Check for Possible Data Errors right here. So go ahead and click on that. What we're going to do is you're going to want to select the time period that the error happened, or if you just want to see what the most recent errors are, figure out what was the last bill you had entered in and go from there. So the last bill we entered in for this example was the 31st December in 2015. So that'll look it'll look 12 months prior to the 31st of 2015 of December. So go ahead and run that checker. Now if you scroll down, you'll see there's 4 errors right here. This kind of red exclamation point signifies that something is incomplete or missing, whereas this yellow caution signifies that something is kind of atypical or different. So right off the bat, we've got 2 of each. This first error is saying the following meters do not have 12 months of full calendar meter entries. So this is talking about potable water, as you can see here. Right now I just don't have any bills for 2015 for water. Because we ran this for December 31st of 2015 and 12 months prior, and I never updated my water information, it's going to say, hey, you don't have any entries for the calendar year of 2015. So that's the first error here. What you go in is go ahead and update that information. If you're not familiar on how to do that, go ahead and check out the 101 webinar. We kind of went over how to enter meter data and whether it's entry by entry or an Excel spreadsheet that they provide you. Let's see what the next error is. Here's the same error that we came across when we looked at the electric meter itself. There's a gap or missing days in our electric meter. Here you can see the dates that they're missing for. And again, in order to fix that, you'll go into the electric meter itself and add that entry that's missing or adjust the dates to reflect those gaps. The other ones are kind of this caution saying this property has no waste or material meters. Waste and materials, as with water, are optional in terms of kind of benchmarking in your building. I suggest it to be important. It's a great way to kind of capture some waste and materials. This is a new feature for Portfolio Manager, so I haven't even spent that much time kind of playing around in that yet. Meter data before the active date is another thing, and this kind of goes back to the potable water meter itself. So often you might go in and set up a meter, and your first entry might differ from when you set up that meter. If you go back and change maybe the meter reading date, or you put in some historic information, you'll see this error that says the meter reading start date is different from the first bill, essentially. So here, the active start date for the meter was the 1st of January 2014, but our first meter reading date was the 31st of December 2013. I know it's only one day, but we just want to correct that meter start date to reflect what our first meter entry was. So we would change the January 1st date to the December 31st, 2013 date. And you can go ahead and do that by clicking on the meter itself, and then in the basic property information, you can change the meter start date. So I can actually show you that, why I adjust this bill real quick. So that basic property information, basic meter information is going to be right here, where we would change the meter start date. This is not the water meter, so we won't change it, but that's where it is. And we're going to go ahead and redo this real quick. So it's going to be 3/5/2015. So 4/3/2015, 200,000 kilowatt hours and $4,000. Okay, we're going to go ahead and save that bill. That error message is gone. Congratulations, we fixed the problem. All right, so now you're going to go back to the main page, or your main property page. That's kind of the high-level overview of how to look for data quality issues and kind of figure out how to fix those issues. I will say one other thing about some property data. Under the meter tabs, energy and water, you'll see this export data by calendar month in addition to download total annuals by meter. These are two new options that Portfolio Manager came out maybe a year ago. This one would be basically this graph downloaded in an Excel form, provides you with that information in Excel to manipulate and to adjust and create maybe different visuals. In addition to this download by annual totals will give you the total 12-month period from each month. So it'll say December 31st, 2015, and it'll give you the total of the prior 12 months, and it'll do that for every month. Now let's get into our next objective and last objective, which is creating and understanding custom reports. So we're going to go ahead and click on this reporting tab up here under the high-level tabs, and that'll take us to kind of the reporting section of Portfolio Manager. Now there are a number of generated reports that Portfolio Manager will provide for you right off the bat. Those are listed here, starting with energy performance, fuel performance going down. Additionally, you have the option to click on any of these charts, whether normalized site source EUI and so forth, which will generate kind of quick, simple metrics for all of your properties in aggregate. If you're interested in energy performance on single buildings, you can click on these kind of PDF one-pagers that Portfolio Manager has available. If you're looking to apply for Energy Star certification, I'd suggest doing the data validation checklist. This kind of provides you with the ability to go through an entire checklist, walk around your facility, validate that the information you provided and put into Portfolio Manager is accurate before applying for Energy Star, or just validating that your information is accurate is also good. You can also click on Statement of Energy Performance and so forth to provide some of those snapshots. What we're actually going to do is look at how to create a custom template because it's really important to be able to understand and pull out outcomes from the information and the data that you're putting into Portfolio Manager. You want to see how your building's performing. You want to see how it's stacking up, year-over-year performance, and so forth. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click Create a New Template. We're going to name this Energy 201. So the time frame, you can do a couple of things here. You can select current energy year, and again, all of these templates are going to generate 12 months of data from basically what you designate your time frame to be. So the current year would be the last bill or last energy bill that you put in, a corresponding energy bill. So if you have an electric meter and a natural gas meter, it'll be the last date that both meters have information for. You can do baseline year, which would be the first 12 months of data that you have. You can compare baseline years to a specific year you designate, or you can do a year over year. So let's just compare 2 years because that's what we have in Portfolio Manager. For our example, we have 2 years of data. And again, I'm going to want to select the December 31st to capture 12 months prior. We'll do 2014 and 2015. Here you'll select the number of properties you want to look at. For this example, we're going to select one property, but if you had 25 properties that you wanted to look at and compare, you would go through and select multiple, in which case it would open up a dialog box where you could select which properties you want to look at and compare. We're going to look at one property. It's going to be PM Training 2. And then you're going to want to go ahead and select information and metrics that you want to display. So for example, there are a number of metrics and categories that you can select from. This kind of property information is what you'll land on first. Some defaulted values will automatically populate, such as the property's name, and if there was a parent property involved. You can select the address, the city, the zip code, so forth. You're going to want to click probably gross square floor area self-reported, or you can do the calculated. That'll be like all of your building functions added together. So in this example, it would be the 200,000 square feet of office space plus the parking. If you want to see those broken out, you would want to select the combined parking and building, as well as just maybe the building. Then the primary property type, if you have multiple buildings, it's important to identify buildings that are different and comparable to each other. So like you're only going to want to compare maybe office buildings to office buildings rather than an office building to a restaurant. So I would suggest clicking one of the EPA's calculated property type. Okay, and then you have the option to select occupancy, year built, any sort of certifications you have attached to the property. You can select the largest property use if you have multiple property uses. But for now, that's kind of the basic information that I'd want to see if I were generating a report. Property ID numbers, if you have any of these IDs associated with your building, you can generate them. For this example, we don't have any property IDs. Property use details would be what's the average property use for adult education. If you wanted to compare office property use details, you'd go down and select office down here. If I can get to it. Right here, like the average number of computers, average number of workers on main shift. We're not necessarily concerned with that right now. For this example, I'm more or less concerned about how my energy performance is between the 2 years. So energy used by fuel source, we're going to want to select our fuel sources. So we have an electric meter and a natural gas meter. So I want to see, what's the total kilowatt hours for my electricity. So go ahead and select that. And again, this is selected for 2014 and 15 because those are the 2 years we designated. And then we also have a natural gas meter. So I want to see that in kBTUs. Those are the only 2 energy meters we have. Data accuracy. Let's say you didn't go through the data validation check, the quality check, and maybe you're not sure if you have a lot of buildings, you have 100 buildings, and you want to see if any of those buildings have issues. This is a great way to kind of select all of your buildings and then select a few alerts, such as gaps in your meter, full calendar months, temporary values if you're looking to apply for Energy Star, and so forth, to kind of provide you with one really quick snapshot of if there's any problems within your portfolio of buildings. Energy performance metrics. This is important because we want to start to compare stuff. So if you had more than 2 years of energy data and you weren't comparing 2 years, I would suggest you look at the energy baseline date and possibly energy baseline consumption. But for now, our energy baseline is going to be 2014, and we're already comparing 2014. So you might be interested in Energy Star score. What you will be interested in is this national median site energy use. So the national median site energy use, if you remember from the 101 session, is this data set that's integrated into Portfolio Manager that looks at similar sized and functioning buildings to your own. So it's a national average. So example would be this office building that we're using here would be compared to a similar sized office building, an average of similar sized office buildings. So if I, as a property owner, want to know how my building is being compared to a national scale, this would be a great way to kind of see how my building's performing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on National Median Site Energy Use, and then I'm going to want to see what my energy use would be next to it. It's important to kind of click on these in an order that you want to view them in Excel, because those are the order that's going to populate when you download this list. So next, I'm going to want to see my site energy use. We're going to match it here. So site is what's happening on site within your building, versus source includes kind of the transportation of that energy as well. So for now, we're going to look at just site energy use. Now there's two things you can click on. You can click on the site energy use here, or I think is more important to click on the weather normalized site energy use, because again, if we're going to compare against national median averages in other parts of the country, I want my building to be weather normalized to compare to other climate zones. Whereas if I just clicked on site energy use, it would give me what is basically off of my bills. Whereas if I click on weather normalized site energy use, it's giving me heating and cooling degree days normalized, and then integrated into my energy use or my total energy spend for the year, a little bit adapted for those heating and cooling degree days. So that's an important aspect of that. If for some reason you wanted to see this in EUI, I know a lot of people measure in EUI as well. That's just kBTUs divided by square feet. You can go ahead and click National Median Site EUI and Weather Normalized Site EUI. So the last metrics that you want to compare when looking at, national median versus weather normalized is what's the difference between the two. Now you can look at that here with difference between national median site EUI. Go ahead and click that. There is one caveat, is this national median will look at kind of the site EUI versus the national median average, not the weather normalized site EUI. So there is a quick, calculation you can do to look at the weather normalized progress versus the national median. If you're interested in water performance, it's basically the same metrics as energy. It's not weather normalized, but it's the same options here. Additionally, you have the waste metrics that we went over briefly. If you're interested in cost, go ahead and look at energy cost between the 2 years. Many of you will be interested in energy cost. As you save energy, obviously your costs are changing as well. Greenhouse gas emissions also really important, so we might want to see our total greenhouse gas emissions year over year. And then Energy Star certification, if you were eligible or had applied, you can look at those year over year as well. So those are basic metrics. Let's go ahead and apply that selection. And we're going to save this template. Okay, so once you save that report, you're going to have to find it in your kind of generated or non-generated reports. Often it'll kind of be at the bottom of your kind of custom templates. So right here, Energy 201 is what we labeled it. And you're going to go ahead in and generate a new report. That new report will kind of appear at the top of the screen here. And if for some reason you were generating a report for more than 50 buildings, you might have to refresh the page a couple times in order for that report to turn this kind of green check mark. Once you have that green check mark, go ahead into the drop down and click Download Current Report into Excel. It'll pop up down here on your browser, and you can go ahead and open that up. And it'll look like this. So basically, go ahead and enable editing. A couple things here we'll go through real quick. Property, the headings here at the top, and the year over year. So on our top line, we have 2015, and our bottom line, we have 2014. What I often like to do here is kind of set a freeze pane just so I can see this as I scroll over. So 2015 being at the top, you can see our property gross square feet with our parking including and our parking not included, and then what our primary function is, being office. Here's where it gets interesting to look at year over year performance. So for example, we have our electric use for 2015 and our electric use to 2014. So let's say if I wanted to see what the difference is between those two, I would just type in equals 2015 divided by 2014 minus 1 to give me the decimal, and then I'll probably just turn that into a percentage here for ease of. So it looks like we increased performance from 2015 to 2014 by about 1%. And you can go ahead and kind of grab that corner and drag it over, and then it'll do the exact same for natural gas. So we might have increased about 1% for electricity, but we actually decreased natural gas by about 6%. Now we can do the exact same for the weather normalized. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and go ahead and click on weather normalized. So weather normalized actually remained pretty much about the same. We didn't really change that much at all. So year-over-year performance was roughly the same when we consider in those heating and cooling degree days. And here you can kind of see that reflected in the difference between the national median average. What is important about this kind of national median average and the difference here is the national median average, remember, is the national average from a data set of comparable buildings. So this is suggesting that, you know, the national median is about 129.7 EUI, which is a kBTU per square foot, whereas our weather normalized site EUI is about 95.9 for a difference of about 27.1. But again, remember, this is not taking into consideration that weather normalization. So what we'll do is we'll run that same calculation here. The weather normalized divided by the national median minus 1 and the percentage. So it's about 26%. So it didn't change much, but it's important to look at that weather normalization. And then you can see your energy cost and the total greenhouse gas emissions. If you had selected additional metrics to view, this Excel spreadsheet could go on for quite a while. And you could also include other buildings which would be listed below these two if you compared year over year between each building. So it would be this example building followed by 2 years of the next example building. With that, that's about all that I have for you today. Again, here's my contact information. If you have any questions about what we went over today, please feel free to reach out, and I appreciate you spending some time. Thank you.